Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the new eco-series Listening to Long COVID. This is brought to you by Health Confianza, a collaboration between the UT Health San Antonio and the San Antonio Metropolitan Health District. Please note that we are recording this session that we can share later, but your names do not appear in the recording nor does anything listed in the chat. I am so glad to see you, and I hope you and your family doing well. My name is Raquel Romero. I'm a physician by training, and I'm going to be the facilitator for the eco session today. Before we get started, I have some announcement for the audio and video connection. Please stay muted unless you are speaking. These sessions are allowed for closed captioning, and you can have access to that looking for and navigate in the button on the Zoom and select the option show a caption. If you would like to assist through the session, you can send a chat. You can send a message in the chat to the ECHO IT. And we promote interaction in our sessions. And I would like to invite you and encourage you to add your comments, your perspectives, your questions through the session using the chat box. And if you're able and comfortable, I invite you and encourage you to join us by video, especially in the discussion part of this session. To help with our attendance, would you please put your name, your credentials, affiliation, and your email in the chat. This is again for our attendance records. And please remember that no personal health information is allowed while we are discussing cases and scenarios. We are so excited to announce that this series provide free continuing education credits for physicians, physician's assistants, nurses, pharmacists, technicians, social workers, and a certificate for participation for community health workers that is not accredited CEs. Toward the end of the session, you're going to receive a link in the chat. So you please follow up the steps, complete the survey, and you're going to receive automatically a certificate. You can also want to receive an email so you can reload the certificate at any time. But please remember that this link is open only to 5 p.m. Central Time next Tuesday. For those that are new to the ECHO, welcome. And ECHO stands for Extension for Community Health Care Outcomes. That is a model that provides connection between healthcare workers and providers to create a community and practice and learning. This is a very special space for all of us to share challenge, resources, and strategies to support better our community. This series, Listening to Long COVID, explores the effects of long COVID and share management strategies, including complementary approaches to delivery care. We want to have a panel discussion and then we want to have a video. I would like to go ahead and do the introduction for our session, and I would like to say thanks to the Confianza team to be part of these sessions, and I would like to start with Dr. Barnes.
I'm happy to be here for everyone. I hope you enjoy this piece on listening to long COVID today. This is a unique series, the way it's set up. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you very much. Guadalupe Cornejo.
Welcome everyone, especially all the community health workers. Thank you for taking time to continue our ongoing learning. Yeah. I hope everyone enjoys the session today.
Thank you. I would like to say thanks to the ECHO team for all the coordination and make the sessions possible. Thank you so much. Now I'm going to introduce Dr. Rosenfield. He's going to be the moderator and going to introduce our panelists. Dr. Rosenfield.
Hi, good afternoon. Again, happy Easter, Ramadan, Passover. Lots of events going on this week and this weekend. So thank you for taking time to join us today. I'm Jason Rosenfeld. I'm an assistant professor at UT Health San Antonio, also the implementing director for the Health Confianza project. And it's hard to believe, but this was meant to be our final ECHO session for this program. But as many of you know, we were unfortunately required to postpone last week's meeting due to some unforeseen events that occurred. So we are in the process of getting that final ECHO session scheduled. So be on the lookout for when that will take place. But very excited for today's session, where we brought together an amazing panel of experts from our community to talk about the intersection between arts and healing. And so thinking about this both within the context of COVID, long COVID, but also just general health and well-being, we're looking forward to hearing from our panelists about what do we need to know as healthcare providers about this intersection? What's the value of arts in our patients' healing process? And what can we take away from this to help others find alternative ways of addressing their well-being outside of the clinical walls? So we have an amazing set of panelists, including Jill Ewing, Nicolas Valdez, and Jennifer Yanez Alanis. And so I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves and then share some of their initial thoughts before we open this up to a broader kind of question and answer. And I'm going to ask Jill to go ahead and start us off today, if that's okay, Jill.
Sure. Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to be here today and speak about the connection between creating art, experiencing art, and healing. My name is Jill Ewing. I'm the Director of Education with Bill House Arts. We have two programs, the Go Arts program, where we work with the active older adult community here in San Antonio. We partner with WellMed and the City of San Antonio in the senior centers to provide classes such as painting, drawing, creative writing. And we also have a veterans program called Forward Arts. And again, we offer painting and drawing, and we also provide yoga and a coping skills class that we called memory mapping.
Great. Thank you, Jill. I'm sure we'll have lots of questions and dive into some of the value that you found in those programs in the community. Nicolas, would you like to introduce yourself and share some of your initial reactions, reflections?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me here, everyone. And I really applaud the work that you all are doing. I am a San Antonio-based interdisciplinary artist. I've been involved in the performing arts since I was a child. I started playing accordion through the Guadalupe Cultural Arts Center when I was 9, and then became a founding member of Grupo Animo. And I think Grupo Animo is kind of the focus that I want to talk about today in terms of the intersection between arts and healing. I was able to join Grupo Animo when I was 13. And it really allowed an opportunity for me to view the world outside of myself in collaboration with others, peers, right? And I've continued now. I was 13 when I joined. I'm much older than that now, but I have been a co-facilitator in the Grupo Animo program for the past, this will be my 9th consecutive year. And just a quick question. Are we like, do I go into my plática or am I just introducing myself at this moment?
Yeah, I'd say if you're ready to go into your plática, we can do that. And then I'll come to Jennifer when you're finished.
Sure. Why don't we introduce Jennifer and then we can swing back, because maybe that's better.
All right, that sounds good. All right.
Yeah.
Jennifer, please introduce yourself.
Sweet. So I'm Jen Yanez Alanis, and I'm a poet, educator, community organizer, and research fellow at UTSA, the Department of Culture, Literacy, and Language. I have a focus or an interest in research of languages justice, and specifically translanguaging poetics as third space. As a community organizer, I'm the director of Seattle Unity in Action, which is a ministry at House of Prayer Lutheran Church. And we bring a lot of attention to food insecurity and food justice through our community gardening, where we host about 60 families, 60 newcomer families who were once resettled as refugees. Additionally, for the last 4 years, I've been collaborating with the City of San Antonio, the Immigration Liaison Office, to build platforms for translanguaging poetics and inviting newcomer communities to join our space in this sort of way of healing through sharing culturally and through our different languaging. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much to each of you for I'm muted. Thank you all each for your introductions. And now I'd like to return back to Jill, maybe to kick us off with her initial reflections.
Thank you. So as an artist and an art educator, what I've come to realize is that art is a medium that parallels life. Creating art offers the freedom to explore ideas, make choices, and navigate the outcome of those choices with powerful results. The journey of making art helps process emotions and offers the artist an opportunity to practice resilience. Currently, Billhouse Arts offers classes for active older adults and veterans, as I mentioned earlier, and our populations are dealing with physical, mental, and emotional ailments. They're dealing with everything from aging, illnesses, disabilities, to lung transplants, PTSD, and traumatic brain injuries. Some of our students are also caregivers for their spouses or parents. But when they're in our class, the focus is not on any of those things. Instead, their attention is placed on self-expression, creativity, problem solving, and social engagement. And I'd like to share with you some of our students' testimonials, what kind of things that we're hearing from them. So these are direct quotes that they've shared either verbally or in written testimonials. My pain goes away while I'm in class. I used to enjoy fishing and I can't do that anymore. Now I'm trying painting. I know I'm going slow, but the teacher is so gentle and encouraging. It is such a blessing. I used to just sit here at home doing nothing. Now I have something to look forward to every week. I don't notice the pain in my knees while I'm painting. I didn't think I could draw, but after being in class a few months, my friends have been really impressed with what I can do now. It's all because of my teacher. Now I'm proud of my artwork and it's a real morale booster. At the beginning of the pandemic, when everything was shut down, we began offering classes virtually. And though we still have students that prefer the in-person classes, what we found is some of the students prefer the online classes for a variety of reasons. And here's what some of them have said. I am my parents' primary caregiver. If these classes weren't online, I wouldn't be able to take them. My husband has dementia. Me going to class helps me to forget about everything that's going on at my house. I would never have tried to take a drawing class in person. I would have been too scared. And the student that said that, after taking class online for 1 year, exhibited her artwork at our gallery, and she was the first one to sell pieces. And now she's selling more artwork. And then I have another student who said, I wasn't too sure about my art and venturing out on my own, but you ladies have given me the courage to start my own practice. And that student had suffered a traumatic brain injury. She's a veteran and she was working with combat veterans who were coming home and helping them transition. And so she was still working as a counselor in the military. And after her traumatic brain injury, her mom actually brought her adult coloring books. And she started just very slowly with that. She had to relearn everything, but she started coloring with the adult coloring books. Then she started to create mandalas. Now she has retired from the military. She's started her own practice, private practice, where she's using art as therapy with her clients. And she's also a professional artist that is exhibiting in her city, in local businesses, galleries, and she has an online presence as well. So we've really seen a huge impact on the lives of our students in all kinds of ways. And I'll pass it to Nicholas now, I guess.
Great, thank you, Jill. I think it's interesting, our panelists here, because we have sort of a visual arts focus and then sort of a literary arts focus, and then I come more from a sort of a performing arts theater background. I want to begin by saying, that performing and cultural art practices like are fundamental to a healthy society, right? We know this, and that these things should be viewed as sort of a public good, a necessity, right? Like our city infrastructure, like air and water, like plumbing, right? Like arts and culture are necessary to a healthy society. And I was very fortunate as a youth, like I mentioned, to have access to cultural arts institutions that gave me an opportunity to help process the world around me. And there was a philosophy that was ingrained in me at a very young age, that the work that we're doing, yes, is creative and fun and engaging, but there's a sense of purpose. There's a sense of urgency in the work that we're doing to address sort of the social inequities, health inequities, right? All of the issues that we face in our neighborhoods, in our society. I want to talk specifically about Grupo Animo, which is a youth theater company based out of the Guadalupe Cultural Arts Center on the west side of San Antonio. 78207, which has some of the worst health indicators in probably the country, definitely here in the state. Economic disparity, right? So this is an area of the city that has a lot of needs. Our program, our Grupo Animo program, has been basically in existence for almost 25 years. There's been some gaps in that, but again, I am going into my 9th consecutive year as a co-facilitator. Now, we worked through the pandemic. We had to, like many people, pivot to online engagements. But I think that the takeaway from my experience working with the youth during COVID was that, you know, the isolation, obviously, that we all experienced during that time, you know, giving these young students an opportunity to find a place outside of their normal school online work, to have a creative place where they can engage each other, you know, it was so beautiful to see the transitions from these students coming in, quite not knowing what to expect and how to engage each other, to our end results in our performances that covered a wide variety of topics in the past 3 or 4 performances. But a lot of it was about sort of mental health, dealing intergenerationally, and all of this in the context of sort of the COVID lens, right? It was a beautiful transformation for our students, obviously, to have an opportunity to think larger, to think outside of themselves, to find their place in the world, but also the reaction from their families and from their parents, right? And I think that cultural practices are a great way to explore some of our cultural nuances and things that there's so many taboos. I think when I'm speaking specifically within a Latino family context, right, where it's not part of our nature to like seek out health, you know, to deal with some of our health issues, right? Not just physically, but mental health issues and things like that. And there's conversations that sometimes don't happen in our families. And the performing arts and cultural arts practices are a beautiful way to allow those interactions to happen. And parents walking away from these performances, never knowing that their kids were actually thinking about these large issues, right? Allowed for an opportunity for that to have that intergenerational conversation to begin to happen. And all of that moving towards us allowing ourselves to have these difficult conversations and to seek out the kind of help that we need, because those conversations sometimes don't happen. You know, we are continuing to explore how to engage these students, and now that the pandemic is allowing us to meet in person, right? We'll continue to explore these things. And I think now a long COVID conversation, I think, is part of something that we'll begin to explore with our students, and how that's affecting their families. So I'll leave it at that, and I'm sure we'll have some questions, but pass it on. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicolas. Okay, so I wanted to start off by saying that I did create a document, and it has a few research articles that you all can peruse. It's mostly qualitative research. And I selected pieces from around the world because I think now, after the pandemic, or while we're going through the pandemic, what we've learned is that we are a global community. And we're learning more and more that we share so much in common with each other, especially as we are seeking to heal from COVID in particular, right? But in general, to heal. So I've got these articles for you to peruse through, and they are mostly within the theoretical frame of healing and love and community and family. In addition to that, I've also provided some links for different arts organizations here in San Antonio. And within some of the links are more links. So definitely go into them while you're looking and searching. Additionally, I have my contact information if I can be of any kind of support beyond this presentation. So one of the things I wanted to say is this. Today, I'm in a very fortunate position to be a research fellow, to have really great health insurance, but it wasn't always the case. I grew up, in a poor community in California, but what I had was the benefit of a father who was a musician and a songwriter who could play many instruments. And we toured with him. He played conjunto music. He took a lot of norteño music into California spaces, and we had a really exciting, beautiful life. And what I didn't know then was that I was in a constant state of health and happiness because of the music and because of the way community and family came together to co-construct these beautiful spaces. And additionally, my mother was an educator in one of the first migrant education programs in San Joaquin Valley, which is, I guess, why I do the work that I do today, working with newcomer communities and working with music. I did a lot of songwriting with my father as a child. So I think the other thing that qualifies me to speak in this space is that one, I had COVID. Two, I have a myriad of autoimmune conditions, and being involved in poetry and in the arts community, and not just as a writer and as a facilitator of the art, but also as one who just went out and enjoyed the arts. I can't tell you how many times I've danced to Los Nahuatlatos with Nicolas, singing and playing the accordion. So, just being a participant as an audience and as a listener and as a dancer is also very healing. But I think one of the things that was really important to me through the generative work that I did through my poetry is I tried to learn more about my body, where it's at today and how to help myself heal. And again, full disclosure, I have a really great rheumatologist who believes in very holistic ways of healing through food, which probably also explains my fascination with food justice. So in that way, Nicolas talked a lot about, family traditions and, the way family has helped shaped, our spaces and the way that we communicate or the way that we no longer communicate. And through my own matrilineal research, I started to learn a lot about, what has happened generationally through my great-grandmother, my grandmother, my mother, myself, and then now what's happening with my own daughter in this space of health and healing. And what I understand is that a lot of it is due to a lot of really negative information that I had been fed, no pun intended, that led me to an eating disorder, which then led me to writing my first collection of poetry, Surrogate Eater. And in this space, it's opened new ways of connecting with community and with other folks that are dealing with eating disorders and body positivity. And in that sense, when we start to talk about body positivity and health, of course, it opens space for things like COVID. And COVID was a huge sort of focus on a lot of our work that we did for 2 years, especially I think the year and a half that we were sheltering in. And we found these new ways to go out into the community to share and to sort of break away, or a lot of you have heard this decolonized way of sort of co-constructing with community. And we find ourselves doing more of that. It's no longer just sort of these hegemonic ways of facing health. You know, now we're coming together with community and we're looking at what do we already know about ourselves, about our bodies, about our health, about ways of healing. And we're building these new spaces through the arts. And yeah, I think that's all I have. And like I said, I've got that document. I really hope you get some good use out of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jill, Nicolas, and Jennifer for sharing your perspectives. I'm sure there are a lot of questions and I want everyone to be thinking about those questions. I'm going to take the liberty of being the moderator to get to ask the first. And this is hard because I've actually got a number of them here I want to ask. But I wanted to maybe see if we could dwell on this this concept that Nicolas mentioned, and I think Jill, you mentioned it as well. How can healthcare workers, whoever we are, use the arts and help leverage the arts as a conversation starter, like you said? So whether we're in the clinical environment or in the community, what advice do you have to us as a learning community about starting the conversation through arts in some meaningful way to help our patients find health and well-being in their lives? And this is open to anybody to start.
I'll take it. I'm sure that Nicholas will have something to add, but I think just prescribing, suggesting why not do something fun now? Maybe there's something that you've used to do that you quit doing, or something you've always wanted to do, but you didn't have the opportunity, like take an art class or learn an instrument or take a creative writing class, and just out there as a casual thing. One thing that we've really noticed is our language that we use is really affects the interest of our students. So if we start talking about mental health or issues or things like that, people sort of feel like they need to be fixed, and it's not as inviting to them as, hey, let's do something fun. Let's do something engaging. Let's get around a community of like-minded people and share some fun experiences and be creative. And that seems to kind of open the door, I find.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it allows us to generally to have a much more engaging conversation, right? Again, making it fun, right? But there's so many different ways to, I mean, we're not reinventing the wheel here. In theater practice, there's like Augusto Boal's kind of like community engagement practices, things like that, right? But I think that having an opportunity to have different tactics, right? Because we're all different learners, and some of us are more visual, some, right, so on and so forth, right? But I think things like, breakout groups where you get a big sheet of paper and get to draw stuff, like that's always really fun, right? And song sharing, creating songs and creating art, with the group around this particular issue, just makes it easier, I think, to process, right? And for us who it's hard to sit in a panel discussion and just receive information. So I mean, I think that's an obvious way of being able to engage people in a much more creative and fun way.
Nice, thanks, guys. So I heard Jill talk about language, and I want to take that a step farther. So what I want to say is this: start to honor the language of the people that you serve. Find ways to connect with their language, not just with their language, but with the culture and the experiences that come with it. Start to think about the way that you communicate and how you may very possibly be using deficit type language. Start to reframe the way that you talk about the ways that other people have been practicing health. So often, a lot of educators and health workers, and I'm only talking about my own experience, they come at it with these ways of solving health issues, without taking into consideration the knowledges that we already have with us. to so start to collaborate in that space, start to build and co-construct and be a partner in the health and in the services that you provide with the people that come to you, trusting you. Thanks.
Wonderful conversation. I want to see if anybody from our learning community, from the hub team, has any questions or discussion points they'd like to raise. If our panelists have additional thoughts they wanted to share. If not, I will continue to ask questions. Yeah, go ahead, Niall.
You can also, I'm sorry. Yes, Dr. Barnes?
So one of the things that occurs to me as I'm listening to this is that healthcare providers have a little interaction with somebody that lasts a few minutes. Yet our patients' lives are a lot more than those few minutes that we interact. One of the other hub team members at a planning meeting several weeks ago made a comment that if you add up every moment someone spent with a healthcare provider in their entire life, it might add up to a month. And yet we look at patients, we interview with our little blinders on, looking for the problems that we know how to solve, and assume that there is no other input other than the stuff that we want to bring in. And I think art is a way to start a conversation sometimes for those healthcare providers that can't figure out how to do that. They're trying to figure out, and I liked Jennifer's comment there when she was talking about not only their language, but their culture. How do they approach things as opposed to how you approach things? So I really appreciate that piece to it. And one of the things I try and do is ask, my final question whenever I'm doing my standardized interview is always, is there something else you think is important that I haven't covered yet? And it's a sort of a catch-all question that could get anything, but hopefully it opens the door for things that I haven't considered. Thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate it. And the other panelists, the comments support that.
So there wasn't necessarily a question, but I did want to say this. I think that's why this project, the Echoes and the Health Confianza project are so important, right? Because your community health workers are bridging, right? They're bridging between the healthcare providers and the community. And they go into spaces where so many things are important to the community, like loteria, music, poetry, and the more work that the community health workers do in making these connections, I think the more that that you all are going to come together, everybody in their own space of understanding and of expertise. Like nobody has to try to be the expert in every space. Trust everybody to do their part, including those community leaders that are inside of those communities. Trust them. They've been doing some hard work for a really long time. And thank you so much for bringing attention to that, Dr. Barnes. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I want to follow up and just say, I think that's a really important part, right, is creating trust with the community. Again, as a Latino perspective in South Texas, San Antonio, institutions, right? We're sort of intimidated by the brick and mortar institutions. And then I think that's a great point, that the interactions that we have with these healthcare institutions tend to be so short. And so programs like this that have consistency of visibility in community is so important, right, to gain trust from that community. And so this work, I think, is really important in that aspect.
Thank you so much for this comment, because this is the heart of the echo sessions, trying to hear stories, and we listened, and trying to see the circumstances around, and trying to get a better understanding. And the trust that you mentioned, Nicolas, very, very important. Is trust and is something that we need to gain, right? It's something that it has to be built up, as well as the respect, so important for every single community. But as you mentioned, for our community, as well as Jennifer mentioned about the language, how important in the way that we see things, right? In the way that we make a comment. I wonder if from our audience we have questions, comments. You can say it, or you can put it in the chat, wherever you feel more comfortable. But I think it's a wonderful opportunity to share all these points. And also, I like in the way it says, we build new spaces to communicate. Maybe we haven't anticipated that, but now we're looking for new spaces and new areas, right? Guadalupe, do you have a comment?
Yes, my comment is to just reflecting on the work that I do with community, and primarily with the immigrant community, and how can we create more opportunities where people, and I think this applies to for our vulnerable communities that we work with, they're so busy working that just thinking about spending time to do art or appreciate art may seem like too much. So how do we, as a community, collaborate to incorporate this type of activities into the work that we do as community health workers? What resources we have as CHWs to reach out and bring these opportunities to our spaces, and that we incorporate it in our activities where we lead the community to see the value, because once they are participating, they do experience that positivity of being part of a community and of doing something that they enjoy, like the loteria. With the Alzheimer's Association, we did a convivio for the seniors, and that's a group in many sectors of San Antonio that are disconnected, still dealing with the isolation that we experience with COVID. And so when we put out the invitation, I made it a point to say it is a convivio, because if you tell them it's a health presentation or it's a health screening, people may be, well, I'm not really interested in that. But with the convivio, I saw that we had a good turnout. People really enjoyed the loteria games, but what else can we incorporate, and what support systems do we have from the artist community and musicians and every one of you?
If I may start, I've been working with newcomer communities for 15 years. And I'm talking right at the point of resettlement. So, I learned the hard way not to be presumptuous, just the lady that shows up and wants everybody to participate with poetry. People are hungry. They have to get jobs. They have to get their children enrolled in schools. And I think it's really important that we know our population, and we understand the services that are being provided to them and where they're at. Because if they're still in these sort of traumatic spaces, it's going to be really hard to say, hey, come write some poetry with me, right? Very presumptuous. So I think that it's really important that we find ways to collaborate with our clients, with the people that we're in service to make sure that they have access to all the necessary resources. And I do think that there's sort of a spectrum of services and experiences that some communities have to have before they can even operate in these spaces, right? But perhaps I think if we start to include the arts as part of their wraparound services, and we start to normalize the arts as another way to reach health, to be healthy, to be happy, maybe the more we move toward doing that, the better they'll be receptive to that. So maybe that's something we can all think about together. Thanks.
Can I highlight that? And then I want to invite Ludi to make her comment, which is, I love this. I was going to say it before you said it, Jennifer, but thank you for verbalizing it. Arts needs to be part of our social services that we're offering, whether it's within healthcare or social programs. So all our CHWs out there, let's be thinking about how do we connect our communities to these opportunities. Ludi, hopefully it's a short comment, because I want to make sure we move on to our storytelling piece. But Ludi, please.
Yes, I just wanted to say that I love the arts because it gives the opportunity for different generations to have a combined experience and to have that, the different generations communicate and to heal together, because that's what makes us, makes us to be understand each other. And for another time, it's just like programs that you have right now that kind of do that, or do you have any programs that do that, bring the different one, trying to work on the different generations working together?
Thank you, Luri, because it was a comment before. It says allow to have more conversation and make it fun. That was another comment that I think is this space that helps to build a space where everyone can have a comment, everyone can bring their opinion, and the time that you can enjoy. Dr. Rosenfield, I guess gonna pass this space to you.
Yeah, and Ludi, I'm going to ask our panelists to respond in the chat. If you know of intergenerational arts programs that we can share in the chat, that would be great. But I do want to move us on to our storytelling piece quickly. Before that, Joaquin is challenging our panelists today. If you could share your shortest short poem, you can put it into the chat. Again, we can react to it after our storytelling. But again, in our final echo session here, listening to Long COVID, we flipped the case. Rather than having our healthcare workforce sharing a clinical case with us, we've asked members of our community to tell their story, to help us see the person behind the illness that we oftentimes see in our clinical and healthcare environment. And so we're excited to bring to you another one of our stories. And I do want to recognize that our storyteller is actually here in our audience with us today. So without further ado, here is our case for today.
You have to not necessarily rely just on the healthcare community to save you, but you almost have to save yourself. And so it's going to be very easy to give up. I know I wanted to give up and quit. I remember saying that to my sister, saying that, I'm suffering so much, nobody should have to suffer like this. If this is what my life is going to be like going forward, I don't want this. This is not right. I didn't get tested for COVID-19 until late June or mid to late June. And by that time I had already had experienced symptoms, and they weren't, of course, the normal 2-week symptoms that everybody else sort of got when you had a more acute case of COVID. I didn't really know what they were related to, neither did the doctors. What kind of brought me into the emergency room was severe tachycardia, severe heart palpitations with very high heart rates. And when I got to the emergency room, the symptoms would often subside. So then the emergency room physicians would just dismiss it as anxiety. I just couldn't believe that something like this that was just so out of my control was happening, and that no one knew what was going on. And they just didn't seem like they were interested in trying to troubleshoot or help me. They just kept dismissing it as psychological in nature. And I just felt very helpless. I know that something is going on with my body. I know my body very well, and I just know that something is up, and I just felt like no one is helping me. No one is interested in helping me. I had started to tell my family what was going on. They knew about the miscarriage, and I had told them that I was going to the emergency room to troubleshoot some of these issues, but I don't think that they realized what was happening either. And I just didn't feel like I had the support of, especially my family, during that time, because I think they didn't really believe that what was happening could be related to the pandemic. Long COVID is like this barrage of symptoms, and not everybody has the same ones. And so we really are relying on the healthcare community to roll up their sleeves and help us troubleshoot this nightmare that we're in, or that we've been handed. We don't know how to even sometimes like describe the symptoms that are taking place in our bodies. And so we know that that can be frustrating for providers if we can't articulate it, but that just is a result of there not necessarily being a vocabulary already established for this particular illness. So many of the providers have just been so overwhelmed, I think, when we are sitting in their offices because we're describing numerous symptoms. They should know that we are just as overwhelmed. And it's not just because of the symptoms that we're experiencing, but also because of the impact that it's having on our lives. For me, it has stolen every single thing that I have ever built. If they could just be a little understanding and empathetic that not only are we dealing with the physical symptoms and mental symptoms, and often in most cases, we're also dealing with the destruction of it. And so we need help. We need their help. Something that I kind of just discovered on my own by talking to other patients, which was making lifestyle changes, specifically dietary changes. And that seemed to be like one of the biggest game changers in my treatment, was to follow a low histamine diet and to eliminate many, many foods. The other game changer drug that for me has been naltrexone, which is given to me like in a very low dose. And that was something that Dr. Verduzco Gutierrez prescribed. The way that I've described it to friends and family is like, it was like turning on a light switch. Like I went from just being completely fatigued, like barely able to get out of bed some days, to actually being able to have energy again. I actually completed graduate school through 2020 and 2021, and actually finished the degree in 2022. Getting the degree and being able to do that and be at the ceremonies will be that much more pleasurable because of everything that I've been through. And so I really hope to make it to Chicago in June for that. My boyfriend and I are talking about moving in together. And so we also are talking about having a child. And when I had the miscarriage and when I got sick, I just had given up on all of those dreams. Like I didn't think that I would ever be well enough to be married or have a child. And now those dreams are coming true. And I'm prioritizing like that personal life and community in a way that I hadn't before, because I was like kind of a career woman. And I'm just trying to like just enjoy like every day and try to take pleasure in the small parts of life, the small and big parts of life, and not expect so much out of it, but just be happy with what I'm given, and just spend as much time with the people that I love.
As always, I want to thank Rosario, who I mentioned is joining us today in this environment, as well as all of our storytellers for one, being willing to share their stories, to help us hear and acknowledge and better serve individuals like yourself. So thank you so much, Rosario, for being here and again sharing your story with us. I want to pose, we don't have a lot of time. I know there's a lot to unpack here in a very short period of time. I'd like to just pose my general question to the group, which is, any observations? What did you see, hear, or observe from the story that can help us as healthcare workers, as folks in public health, better serve and care for individuals like Rosario? Any themes that emerged from this story that people would like to share?
I just want to say how unbelievably brave you are, Rosario, for giving that testimonial. And I think that when other people see it, will deeply resonate with them. And I think that's part of the work that we do, the part of the work that we do as cultural arts, practitioners, is allow opportunities to allow people to see themselves reflected in the work that we do, and stories that often go so unnoticed. Beautiful testimonial, and thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anyone else ready to share, but that remark on, how you were so busy with your professional life and then everything that happened, and then going back to find refuge with community. I think that means a lot, because everyone is so busy, right, with your lives. And then at the end, it seems like community and family is where we find, hopefully, the space to heal and to find refuge.
Yeah, and I want to tie a couple of threads here from our other stories. We've heard this in almost all of our storytelling series so far, that an important part of the care team for each of our storytellers has been their friends, their family, their loved ones, not just the healthcare professionals who are doing, as Rosario said, their best to learn a new language and a new way of thinking. And so I want us as a learning community to remember that we neglect to ask the questions about the people around our patients and the individuals that we serve, only to our own neglect. So I appreciate you saying that, Guadalupe. Any other thoughts or yeah, Rosario, I see.
Yeah, I just want to jump in there and just kind of provide some more context about the community. So I was living in California at the time, but my family's here in San Antonio, and I had to move back here to get care. But like I said in the story, my family was not originally very supportive. They just thought that what was going on was in my head, and just sort of left me to deal with it. So I had to actively try to show how visible my symptoms were, because I was dealing with sort of this invisible illness. And it wasn't until I got hospitalized in July 2021, that, like, almost a year and a half after I started having these symptoms, that my family started to say, oh, something really is wrong with you. And it was at that point that only one family member, my sister, came to my rescue and helped. And when she started to help, then other members of the family started to see that I did need that support. And slowly over that year, I did start to heal. But I do think that's a really important point, that providers maybe need to be aware or not make assumptions that people have the support that they need. When I was first seeking care from the providers, I had no one. There was nobody there that was like really helping me. So I think that's really important, that we don't make those assumptions, and that we just try to ask more about the patients. They might need more care than just, what they're getting in your office.
I would like to say it also, Rosario, that you mentioned if they can be a little bit more sympathetic, right? Empathic with what you're feeling. But I really appreciate the story, because it encourage all of us to keep looking and seeking for help, right? And just keep looking and knocking the doors to find help in the way that you say at the beginning, in terms of your family, but then also for healthcare providers actively looking for help and express your symptoms, is what you said. And I think it's very good thoughts that you shared. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, I think it's really important to not give up for the patients. If you're not getting the care that you need immediately, either if you're not getting it from your family or from providers, like just keep going until you find somebody. There are people that are willing to help. And as more awareness is gained, as we learn more about long COVID and people are understanding it, there are more and more people out there that are willing to help. You just have to keep knocking on those doors.
Just keep looking for help and knocking the doors. Yeah, very good. Dr. Rosenfeld, you wanna?
I was going to let Guadalupe make a statement and then I'll.
Oh, Guadalupe, I didn't see the okay.
I was like, this is a call for clinicians, and I know that most providers have been trying, but this is the opportunity where you can incorporate your social workers or community health workers to be part of the support team for the patients, because you're right, Rosario, not everyone has a supported network at home. And so it's like every time I am that person for my family, and every time I have to call a doctor to schedule an appointment, I'm making it the point to ask, do you have a CHW? Because it is too much for me as a family member to do a lot for my family while I work and take care of my personal health. So yeah, for anyone that has the opportunity to advocate, to incorporate more team members to the care team, this is just another example of how important that is.
I'm going to try to draw a couple lines here, but before I do, I want to see anybody else have a comment, other observations, whether it's about the storytelling or the arts and healing panel, because if not, I'm going to hijack and get to say the last word. So, okay, you've had your chance. So what I love about this session in particular, so Rosario telling her story, this harkens back to what Jennifer was talking about with using language to create new ways of knowing. This is what we wanted to achieve. We know so little, but are constantly learning about COVID and long COVID, and these stories help us put language to an illness and a constellation of symptoms that we still don't fully understand. And we ignore this at our own detriment. So the storytelling itself is a form of art, as everyone I think understands and would appreciate. And so whether it's recording our story or putting it down into poetry, drawing a picture, or doing the performing arts, all of these allow us to understand the context in which we are currently living. And then we can take it a step further and use a whole bunch of these artistic tools, again, all medium, to then help us find the pathway forward and help us educate more and more people within our community, whether they're healthcare providers or the community themselves, to create the supportive networks for the individuals like Rosario and Eddie. And again, Eddie, thank you always for being here and sharing your perspectives on this, that the guitar helped you kind of reconnect with yourself and find a path forward in your healing. Again, I've been always impressed. I am not an artist. My form of art is in the kitchen, and I love it because it allows me to disconnect from reality for a little while. And I think that's the value of this, is it gives us an opportunity to do something that is different and alleviate the pain, like Jill was saying, as we engage in art. So I just wanted to highlight this connection between our storytelling and this last, what was supposed to be our last panel on arts and healing, because this was very intentional. It's to help us give language to things that we're still trying to understand. And I encourage our healthcare providers to tell the same stories, because your version of these stories is just as important as the stories of our individuals living with long COVID. So I want to thank everyone for their participation today. I'm always invigorated. We do have one more session coming. Please be on the lookout, but I'm going to let Raquel kind of bring us home to bring this to a close.
Thank you very much. And thank you all to be part of our discussion today. Thank you for all the chat and your comments. We deeply appreciate it. And please complete the post session survey that is in the chat, the link, and your feedback is so important for us. You can also look for the credits, and it's in the chat, the information. To those that joined late, we had to close last week's session at just the last minute due to technical concerns, but we're working to find, as the Dr. Rosenfeld mentioned, the time where we want to have done the following session. it's supposed to be the last session. But we want to communicate with you by email. Please look for those emails. We would like to see you in our next session. And thank you so much for your patience and understanding. And we deeply appreciate your participation. Your feedback, please provide us. It's so important for us. And we're looking to see you next time in our now last session. And hopefully you can join us. And until then, please take care and have a wonderful day and enjoy the time that's that we've been telling in this time. Enjoy what we have. Thank you so much and have a wonderful and blessed weekend.